I was 13 years old when I stopped trick-or-treating. The other kids weren't so eager to give up free candy. But something happened that year. Something awful. My friends Owen, Drew, and I were out trekking for candy when we came to a house that had a big bowl on it. Sitting on the porch, a sign above it read, "Please take just one." We joked about swiping it all, but Owen and Drew only took a few each. Enough to make them feel like badass kids. I have always been afraid to take more than just one, because I was intimidated by authority. Sure, it was just a sign, and it usually meant that the owner wasn't home, but I was a timid kid who always did what he was told. Owen and Drew explained how that house did the same thing last year, and every year, and that people rarely saw the guy who lived there. They dared me to do what they were too chicken to do, so I decided to see what it felt like to do something naughty. We looked around to make sure no one was watching, and I poured the contents of the bowl into my bag. The three of us ran down the street laughing and shoving each other. Part of me expected someone to chase after us. In hindsight, I was right to be concerned. At Owen's house, we dumped out all sorts of candies from our yummy treasures. I tried to offer him and Drew some of the contraband candy, but they refused. I remember Owen saying, "That's all you, dude," and Drew shouting, "I don't want any of your tainted treats." Granted, they weren't entirely serious, but I was annoyed that they weren't sharing in the responsibility, enough to make me want to go home instead of sleeping over. That night, I was torn from a sugar-filled dream by a hand over my mouth and a knife to my neck. The skin was rough and the blade was ice cold. It was just slightly pressing into my skin, ready to slit my throat at any moment. My body went stiff. I wanted to scream, but then a grunt voice whispered,
"Don't make a fucking sound."
At first, I didn't realize what was happening. We were being burglarized? Then I got my answer.
"Can't you read, you little shit? The sign said just one. Just fucking one."
I've never forgotten those words, and the sickening smell on his breath. He went on to explain how every year he would catch kids taking 2 or 3 pieces of candy, which always infuriated him. It wasn't until I took the entire bowl that he finally snapped. Why did I do something so stupid? I was terrified and humiliated at the same time.
"You like candy, don't you little shit?"
He asked me. I shook my head as much as I could, despite his hand pressing against my face. He then removed it, still holding the knife to my neck, and proceeded to shove unwrapped candy into my mouth. I tried not to inhale, but I couldn't help it. I could feel the things pushing against the back of my throat as they whipped it in drool. I started to gag, but he put his hands back over my mouth so I couldn't cough anything up. I truly believed I was going to die. And I feared for my friends as well. My life flashed quickly before my eyes. All I could think in that moment was, how could an adult hate children this much? Everything I presumed about them was suddenly a lie. They weren't infallible, and their authority wasn't always law. Fine. So I took all the guy's candy. Did I really deserve to die? As I contemplated this for the first time, I expected to be suffocated to death. My father rushed into the room, grabbed my metal desk chair, and beat the living daylights out of that guy. I've never loved my dad so much in my life as I did that night. I'm an adult now, and I live alone in a nice house on a quiet street with a lot of kids. Every Halloween, I leave a basket on my front porch, full of candy with a sign that reads, "Take as many as you want." Halloween used to be my favorite holiday. It was the one time of the year you could be anything you wanted to be. You could draw out your own darkest desires and display them for the world to see. No one wouldn't think you were odd for being the person you always wanted to be. There was no judgment for your choice of attire, and oftentimes you were commanded for that choice. Then at the end of the night, you received a reward for your efforts in the form of a bag full of candy. I'm far too old to go door to door begging for treats, but I enjoy watching my children do the same. Weeks in advance, we let them pick their costumes. They are far too young to develop into the ghastly and usually end up picking a character of a popular movie or TV show. I simply take my pictures and urge them to go to each door. I always reminded them to say trick or treat before the door opens. It's been this way for a few years now, but I'm starting to question the tradition, especially after visiting 113 Forest Road. This past year, we made the rounds of our local neighborhood. We made sure to only approach homes with a porch light on, which was the unspoken rule. Our night had almost come to an end when we reached a home that had been vacant for the last 2 seasons. It was the largest within our neighborhood, towering at 2 stories, when all the others only had 1 level. It was a large, bricked Victorian monastery that may have once been beautiful, but the landscape had long needed work. It was the house most kids made stories about, and when we saw the dim glow of that light bulb, I was unsure about letting my kids approach. My oldest begged me to ring the doorbell, and my youngest simply wanted more candy. I was outnumbered and relented at their pleas. My wife sat within the wily vehicle while I followed them close behind. The 2 made their way up the stairs, and I waited at the bottom. Like always, I reminded them what to say. My oldest son held his brother's hand and pressed the lighted button. Ringing, much like church bells, echoed from within the house for a moment before returning to silence. After a few seconds, they turned to me with questioning looks. I had noticed a moving truck parked outside the home earlier in the month, and knew someone must have lived there, but I had not seen them. There was no car in the driveway, and I did not see any lights on the inside. I started to think that they were simply gone, and left the light on just in case. It was dark by the point they returned. I waved to my children to come back to the car and told them we would just head home. The look of disappointment on their faces told me they were not ready to end the night just yet. Their faces lit up as the door creaked to life and a voice beckoned them to wait.
Trick or treat,
They both screamed with excitement. A feeling rolled into me like a thunder, and a signal of danger rang in my head. Something was not right. If they were at home all this time, where was the car I've been sitting in the driveway the past few weeks? I instinctively advanced on my 2 children, taking the steps in leaps. A feeling inside me told me they should not go toward that voice, and I told them to stop as I turned towards the door.
I choose both.
This voice seemed strained, like that of a lifetime smoker. Ragged hands shot from the parted pathway and drew both of my little boys inside. Their screams echoed in my head. My adrenaline shot me forward, while my body slammed against the closing door. I pounded repeatedly, screaming obsessively of every nature. My body shook violently as my world became a spiral of despair. The whole scene drew attention of my wife, and soon she was right behind me. In an effort to find the entry, I took a step back, lifted my right foot, and dropped full force into the hardwood. The door frame shattered, allowing the barrier to fly freely into the darkness. I cried out in terror for my little boys as I rushed through each room. My entire reason for living had just been snatched up in an instant. I had been too late to stop it. When the house had been searched completely with no results, my wife phoned the authorities through wails of agony. We both held each other until the sirens lit up in our little tiny neighborhood. It has been a year now, and we still have no answers what happened to our children. My wife distanced herself from me, and I'm sure she blames me for what happened. I don't fault her for that. I blame myself as well. If I had not let them go out to that door and listened to my feelings sooner, they would still be here. Halloween is no longer a time for fun for us, but a reminder of our mistakes. I don't even leave my house on that night, and even the sight of a pumpkin makes tears stream down my face. The drive home from work is especially hard, witnessing the house not decorated for the occasion. I almost in panic before I closed myself within the safety of my home. Please, if you read this, don't let your kids visit 113 Forest Road on Halloween. On Halloween of 1988, 6 teenage boys ventured into a tunnel on a local railroad. Only one escaped with his life in a photo. Which resulted from that innocent venture was a 2-year-long period of unexplained murders, which killed off a good 10% of my small town's population. To this day, no one knows the true fate of those 5 boys and the reason behind the murders that lasted until the fall of 1990. Except for me. I'm the lone survivor of the 6 who encountered the Wanderer on the trails on that dark Halloween of 1988. It was supposed to be a simple dare, Nothing to it. Everyone had heard of how every Halloween people head into the tunnel and never come out. We all thought it was bullshit. Then again, we were only 14 years old and not very well learned in the way of the paranormal. All we expected was just some crazy dude in a bedsheet. However, what we found was much worse. And what we did made the outcome 10 times worse than it could have been. I guess that curiosity killed the cat really fits when remembering this story. It was me, Steve, John, Andy, George, Bill, and Fred. Explaining our choice of costume is irrelevant. However, let us note that we all brought flashlights, and Andy brought a bucket to collect candy in. Foolish Andy. I remember your death so vividly it haunts my dreams to this very day. And she does too. But not for long. We all had dinner at John's house. It was the closest to the tunnel. After that, we played some Super Mario Bros. On his NES to pass the time until it was dark. When it was, we all departed to complete the dare we so foolishly accepted. I carried a Polaroid to show everyone what really was in the tunnel. We left when it was considerably dark outside. Most of the dads were parading the 7-year-olds up and down the street getting candy before it really got dark. There had recently been some kidnappings in the area, but we didn't expect to meet the suspect, so we thought we would be safe. With each step towards the tunnel, it seemed as it got darker, and when we arrived there, it was pitch black. It was pretty much only us and the older trick-or-treaters outside. We all stopped at the entrance of the tunnel for a moment, realizing that we might not make it out alive. After waiting for one more moment, we hesitantly stepped inside, turning on all of our flashlights. No one really wanted to do this. We felt this more and more as we went deeper into the tunnel. It was weird though. Usually a tunnel ended around 500 feet, but it seemed like this one went for miles. We went on for what I would say was another 3,000 feet. That's when we saw it. At the time, we had no idea what it was. If I had a choice, I would have wished I would never found out what it was and what it did. "What the fuck is that?" Bill asked, half whispering to the rest of us. What we saw looked like a girl who had covered herself in dark paint or makeup and had a plain old nightgown. She was holding what looked like a rod or a staff. Her back was facing us. "Beats me," Andy shrugged. "Hey!" he yelled at the thing before throwing the bucket at it. It clanked off the creature and rolled to the right of the track. Suddenly, it made the most gruesome noise in the world as it turned its head 180 degrees to stare back at us. I hastily took out my Polaroid and shot a picture of it. I put away the camera and shook the developing picture before putting it back in my pocket. Everyone was frozen, in place, looking at the creature. Seamlessly paralyzed, soon the creature lifted up the run and threw it at Andy. It was horrifying and amazing, seeing it throw what we now knew was a spear with such directly, as well as doing it backwards. The spear struck Andy in the chest, dead center in the scrotum. His ribcage collapsed and blood sprayed from the entry and the exit. His spine snapped and he crumbled to the floor. The blood-splattered spear was stuck in the ground, a good 40 feet behind us. It was only a moment before we actually thought to run. We didn't even try to save Andy. I turned my head and saw the creature ripping open his chest, tearing his muscles and organs apart as our dying counterpart screamed in his death throes. It wanted to separate flesh from bone, as that is exactly what it had done. Andy's flesh and innards were scattered around his skeleton in a pool of his own blood. It was coming for the rest of us now. Bill was the next one it caught, extravagantly hit in the same manner as it did to Andy. Then she got George, and then Fred. It was me and John left. The creature was so close that we could feel its putrid breath on our necks. We both heard its demonic growl and screeches as we just barely escaped its ferocious grabs for our costumes. We kept on running even though the acetic acid had built up so much in our arms and legs, and our breath was ragged, and we were so damn tired. Soon we saw the end of the tunnel. Somehow it was morning, which was illogical. but John and I were both happy to see the light of day. Suddenly I heard a trip and stumble. John had fucking tripped. We were outside the tunnel, and he tripped. I didn't even need to turn my head to know he would not be gored and gutted. I ran to a safe distance away behind some trees near my house. His screams echoed through the neighborhood and awoke several families, wandering outside to see what was happening. Everyone who went outside saw the creature that tore in John. When it was done, it swept its eyes across the entire shocked citizens of my small town, and let out the fiend roar that no man or animal could create. It then dashed back inside the tunnel, and everyone ran inside their homes, including me. For 2 years after that, the people who saw the creature were found disemboweled and their skin in their houses. Some people tried to move, but I heard them say it was like they were chained here. The creature was holding everyone here, keeping everyone who had seen it captive in this town. I'm the last surviving person who saw it wander on the tracks, and my time is coming soon. How did I last this long? I don't know. I bet it's teasing me, torturing me, making me shit my pants every time I turn the corner. I've taken a hold on my life, and I can no longer function like other people. I can no longer go out in the dark. My windows are always closed, the blinds always down, the doors always locked. I've tried to kill myself multiple times, but I can't. It won't let me. Recently, I've been hearing the dying screams of my dying friends. I heard a bucket clanking from outside my window, tapping on my front door at night with the sign, "It's coming for me soon." Hey everyone, it's me, Nightmare Planet. I thank you all for watching this video. This video was very interesting to make and watch, so I hope you all enjoyed it. The next original creepypasta I'm making is The Strange Man in Blue. It went into so many questions that give a terrifying, horrific beginning of my biggest creepypasta series. But it'll only come out if one of my videos hits 10 likes, which I know you will be able to do so. Until then, share this creepypasta with your friends when you're trying to tell them scary stories, and trust me, they'll start running. Also, subscribe for more terrifying, incredible content. It will help the channel a lot and bring more support and better high quality videos. If you have a creepypasta or story that you would like me to read, then send it to me through my Gmail in the About section. And your creepypasta could be the thing that make Halloween hands down the single most scariest holiday in the world. And as always, good night everybody. Happy Halloween.